Welcome, dirty peasants, to episode 78 of Wartwood Gazette, the Amphibia podcast. This week we'll be covering the second half of our Season 1 retrospective. I'm your host, Nabaticon, and joining me today we have Impact
Yo, what's good, everybody?
and Nick.
What's up, y'all?
Alright, thanks guys for coming on tonight. News this week. Um, I feel like these past recordings we said that Matt interview and I think he finally kind of like acknowledged it, and it was rescheduled multiple times because of the Barnes and Nobles where it was happening at, like was under construction or whatever. But it's back on, and I think tickets already sold out. um,
What was the date?
oh, I'll tell you, Impact. It's um, okay. I'm not googling fast enough. um, by the time you listen to this, it's probably already done. So if I do end up getting the date later, I'll let you know, but you're listening to this in the future. Um, are there any other news that are less topical?
No, not really. That was
There's
pretty much it,
nothing.
official
Watch
wise.
Spider-Verse 2, watch Spider-Verse 2, watch Spider-Verse 2.
Yeah, so in the future, by the time we this is uploaded, Nick will have seen the Spider Verse, but right now we can't talk about
Yes, right now we can't talk about it, but you should burn it into your mind. See it 10 times. Get that to $1 billion in the box office so we will encourage to make more movies like that.
Yeah, if Mario can make $1 billion, so can Spider Verse. But um, I guess we'll go right into our season 1B retrospective. This is covering episodes 11 to 20 of Amphibia season 1. Um, I know last week when we, not last week, well, last recording, when we talked about 1A, we were kind of like holding, like kind of restraining ourselves because we didn't want to talk about the stuff that kind of like pays off in the second half of the season. And we didn't really want to compare it to we didn't want to compare the first half to the second half because we kind of like wanted to focus on all the first half of the season. Um, I guess to start off, I really enjoyed 1B, but I feel like even though the season's solid, I would still consider it kind of like higher highs and lower lows in comparison to the first half of season 1, where I thought it was like consistently solid. Impact. What are your thoughts on this? General thoughts on the second half of season 1?
I think the second half of season one can be a bit of a mixed bag. There's some episodes where I'm like, like the Cracky Mrs. Croaker, Croak and Punishment. Those. It's one of the episodes of all time. But like I, I do think looking back at 1B that I have overall like a positive experience with it. Like I think there's some fun stuff with Anne's character that weirdly enough I think comes back more when we have like seasons 2 and 3 that I could go in more detail about. But I think this is a lot of fun setup for her characterization beyond just going against Sasha. And I think so I think there's some fun stuff with Anne. I think some episodes can be a bit off at times, but I don't know. I like 1B. I think it's still a really solid part of the show, but I do think the quality can sometimes jump around. It can ping pong a bit, but it it stays steady, especially when we get near the end. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Impact. Nick, what are your general thoughts on the second half of season 1?
Just think I'm talking about it here. before, right? I think my controversial statement is I do find 1A to overall be stronger. And I think that's just, I think like, yeah, both segments of this season, they have like their own, they have their own long list of really good episodes. But I do think overall, with 1B, you can really tell when exhaustion has hit certain episodes. Like there's a certain episodes that just, like there are your very infamous episodes in season one that yeah that I will be going into later as we talk here. But yeah, overall, it has its fun episodes. I think it does. I think yeah. I think you're absolutely right that it does have. I don't know if I want to say it has the majority of season one's best episodes, but it does. It definitely. I mean, obviously, it contains season one's best episodes. I mean, the reunion's right there. But yeah, overall, good second half of the season, just not as consistent as the first half.
All right, thank you, Nick. And I guess I don't want to get into the like episode by episode discussions again, but I do think what's interesting to point out is that Grubhog Day was technically the first. Um, this is the first episode of the series to be like written and boarded in production. That's why and I don't want to say that's why, but Matt actually boarded part of this episode, and I think this is the only segment where he did like extensive like boarding. Because like later on in other seasons, like he'll like do a little bit of like he'll do a couple of scenes here and there, but like this is the only segment where he's been credited uh for the episode as a board artist.
Yeah, because I know he did True. I think he did some parts of True Colors, right? I think the Calamity Ann part. I think
Yeah,
I feel like he
and he
recorded that
also did
part.
I think the beginning of the end of it.
I don't know where he did it.
I think for
What part specifically did?
the Darcy reveal, I think.
Really? I thought that was all Inbal Brenda. Okay. Huh.
Like
Well,
he,
I guess I didn't know that.
but it was like a very brief scene, like something with like the gestures or something. I don't remember entirely, but I do remember he boarded like something with Darcy.
Huh. I never would have guessed with Darcy specifically. Okay, that's cool.
But like that kind of like just when Nick kind of mentioned that like the second half of the season was where they kind of like the plots aren't as like it's not as like cohesive or gradual as like 1A where like Anne has to like we're meeting the characters, meeting the places, and it doesn't really have that same kind of structure, even though like I was kind of hard on 1B because like you said, Impact, like the couple of like the final few episodes, it does I think get the quality does go up a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just these first couple of episodes kind of like it feels like a really like it feels like a really good Amphibia episode paired with a very like okay-ish episode where like I'm looking at the episode list. Like Grubhog Day, like I'm kind of iffy on, but then like Hop Pop and Lock, that was like I think that's ah Hop Pop and Lock is an underrated Amphibia episode, but I never brought it up in our underrated episode discussion.
I mean, you can explain it now. I mean, shit. Now I want to hear it.
No, I just think
Like,
it's like the best of like it's just such a fun episode and like the song like the Sylvia song and like the dance off song, those were like some of the best tracks of the show. Like
yeah. I think one thing I want to add, one thing I do like about Hop and Luck is that like I don't know, I always like Anne helping out Hop Pop a bit more with his problems. I don't know why. Like that was always something that was really nice. Like because like the whole Planter family is really rooting for him. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They're not
that's
like
why I love the episode so much because like Hop Hop goes to Anne for help. Like,
yeah. Sometimes I wish we got even more of that in the show, just in general, because like obviously you have points in the show where like Anne does help out the planters in general, right? Like of course, but like it's specifically their relationship, which is cool because like they were arguing in the first half of the season and they were kind of at each other's throats. But then you have like this point where Pop Pop is generally asking Anne for assistance and help. So you have like kind of a nice like transition from that, which then leads to a bit of tragedy when we come to After the Rain, right? And then they're having beef with each other. So it adds to that their relationship more, and then that tragic angle once we get to season 2. So, but then it all leads to good shit at the end of the show, like most, like pretty much everything in Amphibia. So yeah,
and like that's not me. And even like these episodes, like even though they're not as strong, like I can't deny that there's still like some really like great stuff going on with them. Like Grubhog Day between like kind of like Hop Hop and Sprig, like about like the responsibility for the Grubhog, and Civil War is like our Sprig and Polly like sibling episode, which
episode.
yeah, and then that kind of like gave us like the that like movie about like those like grounded yet supernatural teens like navigating their feelings. It's like
Yeah, that was a little on the nose.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, and then you kind of get like the continuation of like the uh like Hop Hop losing the stand plot line where like he ends up
Pop
running for
popular.
mayor. Yeah, Hop Popular and
Yeah.
like that like crescendos into reunion, like and then Croak and
Yeah.
Punishment, like
Oh, one thing I want to say
yeah.
with Hot Popular, like it's something I noticed when reading a lot of like fan fiction of Amphibia. Like I've seen so many fics in AUs and swap AUs and whatever where Hop Hop does win and become mayor. It
Oh
happens
shit.
so many times. Yeah, it's like almost a trope at this point. This is so like I don't know. I because like not to indulge too much into like to fanfic content, but like it's always interesting because it gives Hot Pop a very different vibe in the show in general. Because like he's not he never intentionally leads a rebellion in the show, but like it gives him a lot more of like presence in Amphibia, and that kind of there's a lot of really fun fics I've noticed that expand on that more. But I don't know, it's always so interesting that like that's a constant thing um in a lot of fics I read of and swap AUs and stuff, or like maybe Marcy's in Wartwood instead of Anne, or Sasha's in Wartwood instead of Anne, or whatever shenanigans. So I don't know, it's an interesting like constant thing that happens. I always thought that was cool. That's it.
Okay, yeah, like I can kind of see how like fanfic writers would kind of like want to like we see kind of like how like Hop Hop becoming mayor or even running for mayor kind of affects like the political situation in Amphibia. So it makes like
Yeah.
I could see why like fanfic writers would want to like kind of play on that, like play with that idea and like see like what if that actually like followed through and like what the repercussions would be.
Yeah, because usually, like, I noticed that it affects what I notice is that usually Newtopia gets involved a lot more too when if Hop Pop becomes mayor. I always thought that was interesting because now it makes it less of a frog toad conflict like in the show. Usually it would be frog, toad, and newt bullshit because now a frog is gaining power and that causes a whole ripple effect on the world itself. It's interesting because it gives the planter family like more gravity to like the world building of Amphibia that like I don't know, it's just an interesting thing I noticed that like it does give Hop Pop a different vibe, you know? It gives him more of a grander like stake in the world building of Amphibia. So I don't know, I always found that really interesting.
Yeah, like, and I can kind of see like why people like getting Newtopia involved like earlier on in someone's fanfic. That would kind of like that would really like change how like their story would play out.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Because it gets like if any of the girls are in Utopia, then they come over there, and then it causes all kinds of chaos. So like, it's usually a way to get like weirdly enough, like Hop Hop being mayor is like an inadvertent way to get the other girls more involved into like into the plot. So like it's a the three-way conflict instead of like just and Sasha. Now it's like the other girl can come in, whoever is in Utopia. Depends on the swap AU, you know, like who went to where. But like, yeah, it's interesting that like I noticed that Hop Hop is kind of the way to make it so then all three girls meet each other sooner. So yeah.
I mean, that is pretty darn interesting though, because I think like honestly, I don't have much to add because I don't lie, I feel like one of the I feel like one of my weaknesses is definitely just not reading more fanfics. Because it really does sound interesting what people have come up with based off the show. And I think like I feel like part of what motivates them to use that instant in the series is just that like I feel like they hype up the idea of him becoming mayor so hard. Like he just has like yeah, he has like genuinely like convincing, you know what I mean? Emotionally convincing moments that make you really root for him. And then they just pull the carpet out from underneath you and say, no, he's going to stay a farmer. And it's like, oh, like, I don't know. Yeah, I could just see that motivating some of the thought.
Yeah, like because I like in the episode itself that like even when Hot Pop loses, he still gets a W getting the stand back. You know what I mean? Like he still ultimately Hot Pop still fought for the right thing. He still followed his heart and his to to fight for the people. You know, even if he lost the campaign, you know, he still got the stand back. Everyone in Wartwood still respects him. And that still has a ripple effect overall in the story. It's not useless if he doesn't become mayor, but it is always an interesting what if scenario. So that again has like huge ramifications over the entire story. So yeah.
Yeah, and then you have like episodes like Trip to the Archives and I'm looking for okay, so Trip to the Archives kind of like explicitly is about them like leaving preparing to leave the valley. And I really like how like this doesn't really show us what's beyond the valley, but like the characters are still kind of like preparing for it. But then you had like an episode like Fiddle Me This where like they kind of just had like a little poster of Newtopia in the background and like it's kind of just like teasing the world beyond the valley.
Yeah. It's that slow setup of us being ready to
Mhm.
expand the world, but like we have our characters have to kind of prepare themselves for it. Which I like that Anne is like I'm pretty sure it's Top Pop's idea to go to the archives in the first place, but I always like that Anne is like significantly more interested to like do research and read up on Amphibia in the valley and figure out ways about how the box works or how to get back home in general. It's kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure they go it's off screen, but I'm pretty sure they go back to the archives like multiple times, right? They go back to it in Bazaar, and I think Night at the End. I might be wrong about that. Like I think they mention it that they went to the archives before,
Yeah, in one of
and it
those
always makes me
episodes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Impact.
No, wait, don't you go.
No, I
I
was
think
gonna
about
say
to.
like in one of those episodes they do mention like coming back. Like the episode starts with them coming back from the archives, saying like they couldn't find
Yeah,
anything.
Yeah, no,
yeah, and
I
that's
think that was night at the end.
yeah, because I think it's bizarre too because like Anne explicitly says like, oh, they weren't able to find anything about the box or whatever, like, and that's interesting because you see Anne like Anna's being a lot more active in getting back to Amphibia in like in a way that's a little subtle, like it's not like she has like a to-do list and like it's writing down goals or whatever, like is or has like a direct plan like she does in season 3, right? But like here you're there's a shift going on with Anne a little bit where like she's she's actively trying to find a way about the valley and stuff and trying to find a way out of it. In like trip to the archives, and then night at the end they start off with like the ice passage between the valley because they can't get out just yet. So again, Anne is still trying to find a way back. She even asks the planters to go there and check. So like, and then of course Bizarre, right? Where like you have that's literally what the episode is about. It's Anne finding more about the box and trying to find a way out of there, right? You have a constant thing that doesn't come back in Reunion well, it does. Like the conflict of getting out of the valley is central to Reunion. But I find it interesting that like Anne is being a lot more active in getting back home. But then like I'll say that for 2A because there's a fun thing with that too. But like I don't know, it's a fun little character shift that like I think adds a lot of conflict to Reunion because like Anne has actively been trying to get back. She wasn't just waiting for Sasha to get there, but as soon as she meets Sasha again, she's kind of like just vibing. She's just kind of letting Sasha tell her what to do, and then recognizing, oh shit, Sasha's batshit crazy, and then they start fighting, and then whatever. But I don't know. It's an interesting shift for the character. That's subtle, so I like it.
And when you mentioned kind of like Anne kind of like being more active, and then also how like Sasha's return and how she kind of had to like protect like Wartwood. You have an episode like Snow Day where it kind of like addresses the events of Toad Tower, where like Anne is now considered like the town protector and kind of like
Oh
I think
yeah.
this is the only episode where that's kind of like where they kind of like bring up her like town protector
Yeah.
role.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Shoot.
Yeah, because I remember Nick and I discussing at the time. It's like we don't really get too many moments of like Anne kind of like being town protector outside of this episode. But then of course we get reunion again. But kind of seeing that like stepping stone of like Anne like trying and kind of failing a bit. So that when it comes to something like reunion, like when she stands up for the town, it's like you kind of see
The
why
bigger
like
deal.
she's their champion.
Yeah. That's a good point. I never thought about Snow Day that way because I feel like I don't mind like Anne not like protecting the town too much because I guess like if we're going super further, like what I liked about Wartwood and like Turning Point was that they could like kick ass on their own, but like when the going got tough, you know what I mean? Anne was always there to back them up with the Toads and here in Snow Day and Reunion. So, like, I kind of don't mind Anne not doing it too many times because I don't want Wartwood to seem weak. Because, like, kind of the idea is that, like, the Toads and the Newts think of the frogs as small and tiny and always needing protection, which is, like, kind of Sasha and Marcy's whole thing with Anne, right? But, like, we know like by being in season 1 that that's not really true. Like the frogs can yeah, the frogs are a lot more capable than the toads and the newts think. So like I don't want it so then Anne has to protect them like 24/7. You know what I mean? But like I like her getting her big moments when like shit gets crazy that she can back them up when they really need it. So I think I like it that Anne gets kind of like really 3 moments of protecting the town and not like, like 5 or like 6.
Mm.
Y'all get what I mean? Or like
Yeah, no, I think it would have. It definitely would have been like, yeah, way overdone if they played that card too many times. I think like, yeah, even I think like, yeah, I think just having and be a more active member of the town. I think that just, yeah, I didn't even like, yeah, I don't know if I ever, yeah, I don't know, I don't know if I ever like, yeah, put that together, but I think that is a really good way to read her development across the season because yeah, because Warwood is its own setting here, it's its own location, and it always felt like Anne just sort of stumbled her way into something that involved it, right? But here now she's actually just like, you know, genuinely looking for something to do here, genuinely looking for something to do with them, like Civil War or another one. Like Easy, well, yeah, of course that Snow Day, Easy, Wally and Ann, like yeah, just all different episodes where she actually just becomes a more active member of the show itself.
Yeah, and of the town in general too. You're getting a lot more like interactions with the town in general in 1B, I feel like, than 1A. I think that's fair to say, right? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah. There's a lot more towny stuff, like even not like individually, but more just so with the whole town. I think that's a nice thing to add here, especially since we're gonna have to defend these people in reunion. We kind of got to know them, get to know them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, a lot of these episodes kind of like the first half of the season was a lot more like and the planners focused and like they're kind of like off doing their own thing, like on like their own little adventures, like not inside the town but kind of like outside of it, and like even like Grubhog Day and like Hop Hop, and like it's like these are all like episodes where like Anne has to kind of like not just Anne but generally mostly Anne is kind of like getting used to like the traditions of like not traditions but like local holidays of Wartwood. And yeah, I guess you could say traditions like the big bug ball game, and I guess the town just is just involved in a lot more of these episodes than in 1A because 1A was focused on Anne the planners a bit more.
Hmm.
yeah,
But I really love like I think yeah, episode 15, which is like A Night at the Inn and Wally and Anne. For me personally, at least, is that's when like the season kind of like the second half of the season started to like ramp up again because it's
yeah,
like Wally and Ann is already a strong episode. Like Bizarre, Family Fishing Trip, like A Night at the Inn, Cursed, Fiddle Me This, Bug Ball Game, Combat Camp. It's like oh, it's like I think these are all like these episodes are good and like excellent. So it's like maybe the peaks and valleys that I've been treating like 1B as, maybe it's just because like maybe just those segments are just so good that like in comparison to like the other segments in 1B it's like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's what's throwing me off, but
Yeah, because yeah, I'm looking over it, yeah. It's I think I think it's that, and I also just think like I do feel like after 1A this because I feel yeah 1A was just about like just setting up Anne's relationship with the planters, just like clearly defining each of the planters of their own specific personalities and just like developing Anne as a person. And I think like after that, the ideas that were left there were sort of just like okay, let's just have Anne explore Warwood. Let's have Anne get used to Warwood, and like I feel like we enter this sort of grace period or like this lull where like yeah, there isn't really that much. I'm gonna say yeah, there really isn't that much emotional meat defining what she ends up doing in a lot of these episodes. Like, and I do think. Yeah, but I'm of course, yeah. Once we get to episode 15 and beyond, all right, that changes. But I do feel like, yeah, it's why we have episodes like, yeah, cracking Mrs. Croker, where she where it's like, yeah, like Spring's conflict connects so well to something that's personal towards her, but she does practically nothing. Like she does nothing to get this kid to stop. So it's like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. But there's also just like, I mean, I don't know if it really needs to be mentioned, but there is also that unfortunate thing where like, you know how it is. American animation, you're chugging along ahead. You got tight schedules. First half of the season, it's gonna be really good. Second half, you're gonna start getting some duds just because you're exhausted. Like it's just how it goes. But I do think overall they did manage to
Huh.
pull themselves together really well here now. Like I don't think there's any bad episodes, but like, there I mean, for me, they're obvious. They're ones that put me to sleep. I won't lie. Like Croak and Punishment and Trip to the Archives. I think that's probably like the weakest parent season one. Like I was like looking around. I'm like, so I saw those two. I was like, all right, yeah.
Okay, like Trip to the
Made them
Archives, like
Alright.
that's like I think that's a solid episode, but Croak and Punishment,
Yeah.
Mhm.
like Spivey kind of saved that episode from like being irrelevant. I mean, I've said it in the past, but I like saying it again. Like Croak and Punishment is like it's like Sprig and Anne decide to become
Cops.
law enforcement officers that kind of harass the neighborhood, breaking and entering into other people's homes without like a warrant, searching their belongings for evidence, and like
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is what happens. Like,
and at,
I don't think the writers were like
and at
were
least
thinking about
at least the writers
that.
show like it backfires for them because the moment Sprig and
Yeah.
Anne face a little bit of like of the moment people start like kind of like fighting back is when Anne and Sprig kind of like immediately like fold. It's like the slightest bit of pushback against these law enforcement
These
officers.
pigs.
They immediately like crumble. but but Spivey, that moon shell.
Yeah, it was a very good moment for the episode. I'll admit. I'll admit that.
But
Just
like the rest, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I
It's
don't
just a
know.
It's hard. It's hard, man. Yeah, because it really does feel like something that belongs is like a 1 or 2 minute short stretched out to 11 minutes. And I feel like I don't know, you can tell they're trying to. I feel like if there's ever an Amphibia commentary, I feel like Max could be like, okay, guys, we were really trying to best with this one. No, we have solid jokes here and there. You know what I mean? Like, it. I feel like they know this isn't their best episode. They just try their best to make it at least kind of watchable. And I think I still think it is. I think it still has like funny moments. It's just like when Gunther turns into like an Incredible Hulk and like chases them through Wartwood. Like that, I found that kind of fun. I mean, it's a fun episode.
I do love that joke in Trip to the Archives, or like the founder of the archives, like Anne describe like Anne's reading like his plaque, and it's like he died violently trying to leave war. Like it's just the fact that he died violently. It's just like it's funny.
They don't even know how he died. It's no, it was violent and terrible.
Like cracking Mrs.
One
Croker.
thing.
Like oh, go ahead, Impact.
Oh, I was actually gonna circle back to something like to Nick what you said about like the the second half of about like the second half of the season. I don't know. It's something where like about like it having what's the word like like Matt and the crew having like a harder time with the second half than the first half. That's
Oh
interesting because
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I feel like I feel like that's the opposite like of most amphibious seasons, right? Like the second half is usually where like the crazier, bigger shit is happening, like with 2B and 3B. So like yeah, like that's when like the most insane stuff occurs, is that second half of the season. So I don't know, I guess I wouldn't consider that the same case for 1B. And I think if it does feel like they have to stretch out the point, then like I don't know, because I don't feel like 1B is stretching it out too much, besides outside of a few duds after Toe Tax and Prison Break. But like I don't know, I'm not sure if I agree with like what's the word? Like I feel like it's the opposite for most of Amphibia's run, that like the second half is usually much stronger than the first half. This is like kind of an opposite scenario, but like even then, I wouldn't say by like a ton. To be fair, more I think on it. Yeah, I just wanted to add that there.
Oh no, I think that's like a completely fair point. Because yeah, now that I realize that, I think like I think you're right with that. I do think a big difference between Amphibia and other shows. I think just a lot of other shows, they're just stuck in the same setting for the entire season. So you can tell, like, I feel like at some certain point, like the best, the best stories or the most emotional in depth they could have made out of that show happened in the first half. I do think, like, what I do, for me, I feel like why it's more noticeable compared to season one versus season one, two, and season three. It's just that, like, they're in Wartwood for like the whole season, right? Like they're in
Yeah,
Wartwood for the entire season one. But then, like, when it comes to season two, season three, like they have their own, like, you can chop both seasons in half and just point out how they have two different major sources of storytelling for both seasons. So I feel like even so, yeah, you could argue that, yeah, maybe maybe the crew will admit, yeah, there were points of fatigue. I do think there's just like that richness that's still there for them to pull really strong stories out of. So I feel like, to
huh?
me, like, that's the sort of, like, I don't know. No, I feel like the point you made was really good. I feel like I should have just. I feel like, yeah, what I say mostly only counts as, I guess, shows are just stuck in the same setting. Because I think, like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it only really, that point only really works for season one.
Huh? Because like, would you consider that a would that be considered a pacing problem? Because like to be fair, like that is something that's a common criticism of season one, is that we're stuck in the same place for too long. So it can feel like the plot isn't moving anywhere. Do you think that's like a pacing issue with this season, of
Oh,
not like having a major transition of like setting and like I guess not tone, but like vibe, because we are stuck in one part of it? Because that's a legitimate thing I think a lot of people say about season one, is that we're in the same place for too long. You know?
oh, my bad. Oh, did it? Did it sound like I was saying that? My bad. I'm thinking. Okay, I must have. Okay, yeah,
No,
because
no.
I think I must have accidentally.
No, I was just asking if you think that is a pacing problem, because like
Oh,
I just noticed that it sounded something similar to like a lot of criticism season one will get of it being stuck in the same place, and I'm like, I thought that sounded familiar. I was like, because most people in the fandom would be like, that's a pacing issue. That's a problem with season one.
yeah, I think man, oh yeah, that's my fault. 'Cause I think I think I meant, I was just referring, because I don't really think it's a pacing issue. I just think it's just like a natural thing that happens with, like, animation itself. Because I mean, like, I don't know, at a certain point you're working on like 20 different story. I don't know. Honestly, at a certain point you can be working on like an entire season at the same time, right? Just because of how production works, just because, like, they make these episodes all together at the at the same time. So I feel like, yeah, I wasn't trying to say, I don't know, I wasn't really like trying to point out any pacing issues with 1B. It's just more like you can you can tell what episodes were just sort of, what episodes were given more love versus what episodes were just like, okay, we made it as good as we possibly can. was just dump that out. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that's what I was trying to point out by 1B.
I got you. Okay, okay.
Okay. And I remember Impact. I forgot what the context was for this. I think just for season 3 in general, but these kind of like highs and lows for 1B, they're there. They're still there, but then when you get to reunion, it's like everything's kind of like built up into this canon and shot out. Like that was the analogy I remember you using, Impact. Like
Yeah,
for
that was
every
kind of Matt's analogy a bit, where it was like they were loading up the party cannon and they were ready to fire. Once they got to reunion, they're slowly setting all these like major plot beats together and then naturally letting them out once reunion shows up. So
yeah, and actually maybe I shouldn't get into reunion yet. I know we still have stuff like A Night at the Inn. Like I'm surprised they got away with cannibals, but they're frogs, so it's fine.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like that was like a big. Yeah, I feel like that's just a weird, just like that's like a weird justification that's used a lot of times in animation. Like you get like the most gruesome violence shown on TV, but it's like, hey, if they're not humans, it's okay.
even though they pretty much are humans, like they have the whatever.
Yeah. Like
like
it's like Samurai Jack. Like she's like there's so much like he can chop off like literally they'll have him chop off a robot's head, then he'll spray oil all over his face, and it's like, okay. Like, okay. Okay, Gendy. Jesus.
and Family Fishing Trip, kind of in retrospective,
Peak fiction.
pardon? Yeah.
Saying peak fiction.
Yeah, I agree. It's man, Sprague, this once again, incel Sprague is our favorite Sprague.
Yeah, my favorite spray, Jesus.
Like a woman enters his life and he just becomes
Bananas.
deranged. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's where we got to see Pollywog Sprague, which is just Polly with the aviator hat, but
Yeah, literally just that. Like,
yeah,
my God.
whole palette swap.
yeah, a little bit more red. Uh, and yeah, Sylvia and Hop Hop are still dating, which is
Yeah.
W.
yeah, because we didn't really know Hop Hop and Luck was that. I'm just checking if that's 1B.
It is. Yeah. It's like I think episode 11.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
It's
over
11.
season over 1A. I didn't really expect it to become a huge thing at the time, but then later it's she's showing up on their little boating date. It's cute. Like
Again, like plot beats, like going back from previous episodes, which is like kind of interesting how Matt said like Disney was like, oh, no serialization, yet this clearly
Yeah,
serialization going on, like in
crazy.
season one. Like there's definitely some stuff. Like I'm not saying Matt's wrong. I'm saying like why was Disney like, oh no, you can't have like serialization with Sasha, but like with like Pop Pop and Sylvia, it was like cool. I don't know what their like guidelines are on that because like there's multiple plot beats that are like set up or handled, but then will be handled. They are set up for another episode and then are used in that episode throughout season one. It's obviously not as serialized as like season two. You know what I mean? Where like the plot is like, what's the word? Like the characters are not moving from place to place, but like I don't know how to describe it, but it's different, you know. So like, but here it's like it's a lot more like, oh, Hop and Sylvia have like become the relationship, and like Hop and Luck, and then like now we come back here with Family Fishing Trip where we continue that storyline a bit and expand it with Sprig and then yada yada, and then like even Hop with the stand like getting messed up, you know, then having that come back and Hot Popular. So like there's clearly stuff going on like that comes back in from previous episodes. So it's just interesting to think about that like the plot is still clearly like moving forward. It's just not like the same way as in other seasons. Like if you're not invested into the characters, then I would say that like you could say that the plot isn't moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, like yeah, so like it's I don't know, it's a weird thing where like it might just be straight up misinformation that there's no plot moving forward in season one. Yeah, it just straight up is. That's just straight up misinformation. Like it's not even like a bad take. This is straight up wrong. Like, like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just funny to think about.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's. Here's the thing. I feel like I don't know, because I feel like yeah, we also just gone over a million times where it's like, hey, it's unfair for you to say there's no progression or development in Amphibia, but then you say this other show has the. I don't know. It's. I feel like I'll admit this. I think I will. I'm always like trying to because I feel like there wouldn't be this much pushback for no reason. I do truly believe that yeah, it is misinformation for someone to try and say there is no real progression in the show, but I do think something that helps other shows create that actual feeling. I mean, okay, I'll just throw it out. Like, let's say, like, down on Gravity Falls. I do think, like, I think that Amphibia has that same sort of. They do. They have that same episodic structure where you can really just like throw things around and have this feeling like nothing has really changed greatly. But I do think what does help create this overall feeling of progression is just the fact you have like these specific symbols of that progression happening. Like I would say like Dipper and Wendy. Like even so Gravity Falls, it's a very episodic series. You do see how his relationship with Wendy progresses over the series where he goes from just like awkwardly not being able to talk to her to actually, forming a genuine friendship with her. Even so, like each episode is just sort of like, oh hey, this cool thing, let's go. I don't know, y'all know what I mean. Y'all know what I mean. So I think with
Yeah,
Amphibia, it's like I feel like there's also just the fact that they're also like not I don't think the plan is they aren't meant to be like what is called like dynamic characters. Like they aren't supposed to be like radically different by the time the show's done, but they do receive growth that just makes them feel more rounded. If that makes any sense. So I do think like I don't know. I do think if someone isn't prepped for that or they aren't used to a story like that, yeah, they probably will end up feeling like nothing's happening, even so that's a lie.
I feel
Like
like
if they're
if
not
I
paying
would,
attention to Anne. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I would say that. I would say that like with the Planters, like Hot Pop is definitely a more definitely dynamic as a character. Like he's definitely shifting around like throughout the seasons. Like if anything, like I would argue season one is almost Hot Pop's season a little bit. You know what
Ooh.
I mean? Like he gets kind of if there was one season I would say Hot Pop has his like time to shine the most, I would say it's one. Two gives him some good stuff too, obviously with After the Rain and his conflict with Anne. But like and then season three, like he's oh man. Like season three, he's there, but he's not doing as much as one and two. So like it's I don't know. I would consider him a dynamic character. I think I would even argue Polly is too, just in a different way. Like not like like characterization wise, but like she is like she's literally changing. Like, like with the legs and stuff, and then getting the robotics and such. And then like with Sprig, like his relationship with Anne is getting better and better and developing throughout the show too. Like I would say that's dynamic. I would say Anne and Sprig's relationship is constantly going upward. There really isn't a point of downward progression because like the tragedy of Spran is going to happen at the end of the show. With Hop Pop and Anne, it's going to be the tragedy is going to happen in the middle of the show. So I don't know. I would say they're still dynamic, just like in a different way. Like Sprig obviously isn't like he doesn't have like episode like one like this episode is where he changes and he like does this big epic thing like with Anne or Marcy or Sasha, you know what I mean? But I would say that he's definitely still developing. It's just not as like dynamic as the girls where like their relationship is like constantly changing with Anne growing, that like Marcy and Sasha will change depending on how Anne grows as a person. And the whole codependent nature of their relationship leads to like you change one thing, it changes all of them. So like I don't know. It's I would say like I don't know why I was going with this at this point, but like I would say that I would say the Planktons do develop just in like slightly differently from the girls, if that makes sense.
I do think like kind of like going back to like the continuity stuff, like Amphibia kind of doesn't make a big deal out of its continuity all the time. Like you'll have certain episodes where like all the stuff with the box, like those like that stuff does feel like the show kind of like emphasizes, oh, it's a big deal. It's gonna be a big deal later on. But then like the stuff that does carry over, like the day-to-day lives of the characters influencing like events in the next episode, that's kind of that continuity isn't as like flashy as like Gravity Falls, where it's like this like big reveal at the end of a segment where like with Gideon or with Bill
Yeah.
or to be honest, those are the only things I can think of at the moment for season one at least of both seasons or sorry of Gravity Falls. But like with Amphibia, it's like there's continuity, but you just don't realize it's a big deal until like the show tells you it's a big deal.
Yeah. It's really when you get to the finale where it's like, oh shit, this was like really important. You know what I mean? Or like any of the season finales where you're like, oh, okay, this is all coming together now. Like
And
it's
yeah,
yeah,
I kind of
it's
like
interesting.
that about how I don't want to get into reunion yet, but yeah, I'll save a point for later.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we kind of talked about. Did we talk about? No, we didn't talk about Curse, but that's kind of like a minor thing where like remember how like
That
Sprig was
episode's
engaged to Maddie? Like,
funny. I do like what they give Maddie that episode though. Like I really liked fleshing out her character, not just making her like the weirdo, creepy
Oh,
girl.
man.
Like I, I liked what they did with that.
I mean,
No, they
but
they they were trying. No, I'll admit, I think they were trying way too hard to like overwrite how they introduced her. I mean, like they're trying to give us shit for thinking that she's a creep when it's like all her jokes were about how she was a creep.
I mean, yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know. Like I felt like I guess I just kind of like giving one of the kids in Wartwood a bit more character, and I think Maddie's one of the weird townies where like I feel like she's one of the ones I think a lot of people wanted more out of like in the show in general. Like like even like when we get to Maddie and Marcy, like with her relationship with Marcy, but like just like in general. So like I don't know, I liked what they did here with like giving her more in depth characterization. Like so I can't really think of a lot of the townies that feel like flat, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel like out of like Wally and like Logger or Croaker or like Toadstool, like they're not like they're not the girls, you know what I mean? They're not like super three-dimensional, but like they still feel like they always have depth to them. I never feel like any of the townies are flat. Like any one of the townies can easily hold an episode. Like absolutely, you know. So like and usually like pretty much most of them have. So like I don't know. I think it was good for Maddie to give her more three-dimensional, like, to give her more depth as a character. There we go. That's the right word. So I don't know. I like where they went with it. It made her more in line with the rest of the other townies.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to get rid of death. I mean, I think this is my this is another cursed take for me. I won't lie. I won't lie. I feel like, damn, no, this is about to bring 2B and 3B into it. But I'll admit, if I'm gonna drop another cursed Maddie take, or sorry, wait, that's whatever. Yeah, Maddie. I'm gonna drop another cursed Maddie take. I I don't believe she gets a solid episode until season 3. And Sasha's Angels, like I just don't like. She does not get a solid episode this season 3. Like that is my cursed Maddie take. That is my cursed Maddie take.
Nah.
Yeah,
Oh
nah,
wow.
it's true. It's
I
cursed
mean,
Yeah.
Maddie. It's
uh,
like think about it. She just has a curse, right? Then Maddie and Marcy. I that's all she got. That's all she has. That's all she has. That's all she has. And then Sasha's Angels. So I think uh, is it that bad of a take? I don't think so.
I mean, Nick, the part that I disagree, I disagree with you about how you're saying Sasha's Angels was a Maddie episode when it was kind of more of a Toadie episode.
Oh nah. So nigga, you saying Manny straight up don't got any?
No,
He
no,
doesn't
no,
have a single good episode.
no. Nick didn't
Oh
say that. Nick
no.
didn't say that. Nick said that Sasha's Angels was the best Maddie episode. I'm saying
But she
that.
doesn't. It's not her episode, so it's like.
I mean, I thought Curse was all right. I kind of liked how like, yeah, I didn't like how like the backpedaling for like Maddie's weirdness. Like
Yeah.
if she said, okay, I could be kind of weird or something, then I could be like, okay, I get it. But she got like so like, oh, you thought
Yeah.
like the same episode, like she's throwing the bread in the fire.
Yeah, literally. Like what was she thinking? What was she cooking? Like, like
I mean, she's cooking bread,
what was she
but
Well, she's baking
yeah.
bread.
I don't know. Serious. I don't know. Not to get us too over focused on Curtis, but like I don't know. I don't know. It's honestly this is what I'm talking about. Like it's 1B. It's good. Then it's kind of mid. All right. It's
Damn.
good. Then it can be mid. Honestly, if I'm being more objective, it can be kind of mid at some places, but you know what I mean. Never bad. Never bad. I can still get through it on rewatch. It's just like you know what I mean. Like I'll put on an episode. I won't know what it is. Then I'll see the title. I'm like, all right, you know what I mean. I'll be like, here we go. Like that's the general. But I don't know. I like 1B. I'm probably still like the 1B hater right now, but I like it. I like it.
I just never heard that Maddie take. God damn.
Yeah.
I
I
feel
just had
like
to
I was
say
so.
it.
I just feel like I'm so used to like Maddie like having a bit more of a positive reception in the fandom because like I feel like one of the That's a 2B thing. I'll say that. I'll say that for 2B.
Yeah.
See, because I think there's a bigger thing to talk about with her. But I think like going down like, did we talk about Combat Camp? We didn't, right?
Uh, Let me see. Is Comic Camp before or after this one? Oh, actually, okay. Here you go. Yeah, we
It's
can go
after
on.
this one.
Oh, I
Yeah.
guess it was. Okay, there's. Okay, let's see. Comic Camp. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Really good episode. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I love the fact that like Tritonio goes from just being like this sort of one-off villain to like. I mean, I've talked about this before, but yeah, I don't know. I always love the fact that he went from like this one-off villain to becoming like one of the most important characters in the whole series. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and I think like this episode and in combination with like Wally and Anne too, like I don't know, I like these episodes like this that sort of make Anne have to question her own thought process on herself a little bit. With Wally, like and Wally is telling Anne, hey, like you're what's the word? Like you can define yourself like not by what other people tell you what to do. You can define yourself outside of other people's opinion of you. Like you're in this different place. You're not on Earth anymore. You're able to meet new people and define yourself differently than you were before. You can define yourself outside of how other people think you should be or think who you are, right? Because Anne is always a character whose self-worth is always determined by how other people think of her, how Sasha and Marcy think of her, how the world thinks of her. So she doesn't really have her own identity undefined by everyone else, right? By society itself. So like Wally is kind of telling Anne, hey, like be yourself, be your authentic self, and figure out who you want to be and stop letting the world define you. And then like you have Tritonio who's saying like who Anne has like this perception of teachers of like she thinks teachers are always being hard on her, that they think like she's dumb or whatever. But Tritonio gives Anne this different perspective, like, no, these people see someone who has great potential and strength and someone who's not investing into their life. And maybe you should do that too. And I think that gives a lot of these elements of Anne, like having her own identity, understanding her own self worth as a person, and knowing she's someone worth investing into, are like again big parts of her journey. Like, like you don't get the show if you aren't paying attention like to these episodes. Like to be honest, like I don't want to sound elitist. I'm just saying like it is a big part of her narrative because like season 2 is gonna have Anne. What is she gonna do? She's gonna figure out her own identity as a person. She's gonna understand her own self-worth as a person. And she's also gonna know how she should be treated by Sasha and not let that happen in reunion and like battle of the band and stuff, right? And again, this is gonna play a big thing in the season 3 where Anne recognizes her own growth as a person and now is going to have to like prove her growth to her parents and to herself by getting back to Amphibia. So like yeah, like you got like a lot of really great episodes here for Anne. I think Combat Camp and Wally and Anne are like these really central pieces to her art, just like as a whole. So I always love both of these episodes. They're like they they are major parts to her story, and if you can't remove Wally and Anne in Combat Camp out of Anne's arc, in my opinion. I feel like they're too important for her. So that's it.
And
Yeah, no, I mean, you really can't. Oh, sorry, I thought you
no,
got
no,
it. Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say, yeah, these are just. I mean, yeah, again, like just yeah, to reiterate, like, yeah, these are just major turning points in her story, and Amphibious, because I do feel like it's weird. So in a sort of sense, it's like the series itself was aware that there was a sort of lull with Anne where she sort of, I think after 1A, she sort of realizes that she just wants to be better than how she acted on Earth. She just wants to be a better person in general. But then I think like what really spurs that movement, what really makes it more active in herself, it is really meeting those two people and just forming a bond with them. So I think like yeah, you're just like yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there.
And like even outside, like you have all this like really deep stuff with Anne's self-worth in combat camp, and like her like willing to actually like people seeing the potential in her, like specifically like her like mentors and teachers, and her kind of like realizing that for herself. But like this episode also like outside of all that deep stuff, kind of like gives Anne kind of like a stats boost where she actually like learns how to use a sword, and that is like an extremely like surface level but still important kind of like
Yeah.
skill that she needs for like the rest of the series. Like
Yeah, I mean, she's gonna be sword fighting Sasha, twice. She better be prepared. You know what I mean? So yeah.
yeah, like you could have easily had like I don't want to say a lesser show, but like you could have had like you could have had the show kind of like skip combat camp and just like have Anne like immediately get into a
Be good with
sword
the
fight.
sword.
But yeah, at least like this show like time and time again, Amphibia kind of like focuses on like the I guess like the linear like progression of like Anne kind of like learning how to live in this world, learning how to fight, and then all this comes back becomes like useful, like learning how to drive Bessie, like all this stuff becomes like all these skills are applicable for Anne, like for the rest of the series.
It's interesting that like Anne using a sword is like. Wait, no, no, no. I was gonna say like she doesn't do it because like her final fight has her going Super Saiyan, against Andres and the core and stuff. But like she still does need her sword fight still matter like Escape to Amphibia. So never mind. I was gonna say it didn't play like a big part in the like because she's not sword fighting a ton in season 3, but she still has the lightsaber duels and stuff. So they still work out for her at the end. And then Newton tights too. So like, yeah.
Oh man, that sword, that like the blue sword, like I think we mentioned like last week, like 3A wouldn't have worked without 1A. But for me, I feel like now that we saw the payoff, I don't think 1B would have worked without 3B. Which is kind of odd to say because like I know like the second half of season 3 kind of relies on like the second half of season 1, but like I just feel like I don't know how to describe this. It's like I get more satisfaction watching thinking about 1B with the context of 3B rather than like I still enjoy 3B, but I don't need to think too hard about the context of like 1B. I feel like I'm just throwing out
Hmm.
letters, but
No, 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 no. I know what
No,
you
that makes
mean.
sense.
I think like, because I do. I kind of think of them as like what's the word like they benefit each other. I forget a word for that. Symbiotic, I think.
yeah, I just feel
Whatever it
like
is.
I feel like 3A kind of like 3A benefits more from 1A than vice versa. And then here I think like 1B kind of benefits more from 3B than 3B benefits from 1B.
So
But
wait, okay, 1B benefits from 3B, but not in reverse.
no, it still does, but I just feel like I get more like satisfaction.
Huh? Because like, no, I guess for me like the moment where Richard Tonio and Newton Tights is like where he tells Anne like "You're not the same girl I knew before." That was like, and like the the music when Anne got the sword starts playing, like that was hype as hell.
Oh, okay,
You know, like
that's yeah, that's true.
yeah, like that was one of my favorite parts of the whole season. So it's like I feel like I don't know because I feel like 3B also benefits. What's the word like? I don't know. I feel like they both were help each other out instead of the other way around. So it's weird how like season 3 and season 1 are like obviously they're core linked, of course, because like first act connects to the third act, classic, right? But like it's it's interesting that like how like season 2 still is like still comes back in like season 3, but like they're not like as core linked or like core aligned as like season 1 and 3. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting talking about it once we get to season 2, but like I don't know. It's interesting how much the show gets better once everything connects. To me personally, so even on rewatch, I think season 1 gets a boost too, like of just having the entire show and you're like of understanding how all the pieces fit together. That when you rewatch it, you're like, okay, I see what they were going with now a little more. That's how I feel personally with like just Amphibia in general. So yeah.
Yeah, and without getting too much into season two, like I think I mentioned it to Nick, but like I always felt like season two was just like I won't say just, but season two felt
Hmm.
like a very like season two felt like a bridge between season one and season three.
Yeah.
Like one and three were like point A to point B, and then like season two is the in between,
Yeah, because I
which isn't
think
a
like
bad thing, because you know it's all about the journey, not the destination. But like, I mean, you could argue that point in favor of season two, but yeah,
yeah.
season three, yeah, season one kind of like now that we have everything, it's like season one is like elevated a lot more.
Yes. Absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Children of the Spore, like all I can really say is that like I'm glad I just enjoyed this episode by itself, and I can understand why people were kind of just like not that into it. But then once the show actually brought back Apothecary Gary, then I could be like, oh, see my like my hidden gem. Okay, not hidden gem. Like my personal favorite has like objective evidence of being like relevant for you to like it as well. Like, yo, Hop Pop brainwashed his kids. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Never forget.
They were annoying kids. I mean,
yeah, like what did Polly say? She's like, it's just stuff like
we
this that
broke all
makes me.
kinds of. I think she said like Hot Pot. We broke a model ship and like you you broke all kinds of ethical lines.
Yeah,
Hot
ethical
Pot.
and moral
Yeah.
lines.
We're even.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, we're even.
And
And
then the kids are
my
just like, yeah,
God.
I guess we're even.
Yeah. They're
It's
just,
like,
yeah, there's no getting through this old man.
yeah, just stuff like that that makes like season one Amphibia like the funniest season for me. But I guess can we kind of like talk about end of the year and like reunion as like one big thing, or
Yeah, that's. I think that's a good idea because they connect. They're pretty much a super episode essentially.
yeah, because like end of the year is a lot about Anne's like self worth again, and like her being selected as like Frog of the Year felt like a very like the frogs have kind of like sorry Wartwood has accepted like Anne and like that's not the end of that like story beat. There's like still more to that. Like the town accepts Anne, and like there's still more to that. Like, oh, okay, now Anne kind of like the show deals with Anne kind of like trying to live up to that.
Yeah, I think like I think with that too, it's like I think this is the first time Anne has ever been in this position of feeling special, because like in compared to Sasha and Marcy, right? Anne doesn't really think she has anything going for her, right? She's not smart like Marcy. She's not charismatic like Sasha or assertive like her. And like keep in mind in school, like Sasha and Marcy got rewards and stuff, like for being all their great gifts and strengths. And Anne's only reward was like because this is all in V armies, like it's like a subtle thing, but like not subtle thing. Anne says it, but like
Yeah, like she.
it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Impact.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I was gonna say it was like she helps keep the I forget what together, like the band and
Track
whatever
team.
team together. Yeah, the track team together. And like that's the only reward she ever got. Like she wasn't gonna get a reward for being like empathetic, you know what I mean? Like she that wasn't gonna happen because Anne doesn't know what she's good at yet. So I think this is one of the few times where Anne's like, oh shit, like I actually might have something to like to bring, and like Toadstool is like, nah, you suck, and Anne gets like really pissed and wants to prove this guy wrong the whole time. So I don't know, it's a fun place for Anne to be that you don't really think about how important. At least I didn't think about it. I know it's important, obviously, like they say it, how Anne's grown, but more so like Anne being in this position is like kind of a big deal for her specifically because she's sort of had again, she hasn't had that same level of like appreciation in her friend group. So I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, especially in like now that we know, like this is kind of like the second award she's ever gotten. It's like,
It hits different.
yeah, it hits different.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of like a hot take.
Ooh, okay.
Actually, no, no, I'll save it. I'll save it for later. It's more about.
Ah.
Okay, I remember the
I,
point I wanted to make last time. Like, okay, I'll hold on to it. But like, end of the year, it's like I try to think. Yeah, we did cover all the self worth stuff. Oh, yeah, the dabbing statue. That kind of.
that's amazing. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
the is the party lit now? Eh?
Yeah, that's that joke made me like I had to pause for a second when I heard that joke. It was great. Like it was I don't know. It's the way Lago said it. Like this party's lit now, Anne. Like,
Oh, you could do a pretty good like logo impression. In fact,
oh, thank you. I guess I didn't mean to do it well, but but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, again, I had the pause when that joke showed up. That was great. I feel like in general, like season one's humor is like I'm not sure if I want to say it's the best in the show. I feel like it might be,
I
but
think
like
so. I think season one's the funniest.
I gotta think about it. I feel like as we go through it, I'll have a better picture of it by the end. But like, it is very funny.
Oh, and then like Spivey becomes a thing.
Yeah, and I like how it's like I don't know. It's weird how Anne like tried to force their relationship again. Like this is the second time. Like Anne was trying to get Sprig with Ivy. Like like she didn't learn the lesson from like the last episode. Like you can't force love. That's not a thing. How that works. Like I don't know. It's. I always find that funny that Anne starts regressing a little bit when she has to get the party done. But like, I do like that it happens naturally, like by the end, where like Ivy's the one to seal the deal. You know what I mean? For being a Chad. So I always thought that was great.
And then I'm trying to think what else. I guess should we go into reunion?
I don't think there's anything. Yeah,
Yeah, I do feel
I
like
think we can. Yeah.
Okay. Like, Sasha arrives and I remember like the hype that night where like, oh man, that bomb format. It's like instead of a week late, it was like a week wait. We just got like a day wait. So it's like cuz like you have the I love how the segment kind of like ends and end of the year. And then Toadie's like, "Oh, Anne, you have like there's someone who wants to talk to you." And then like the mood immediately changes when like Anne just like goes out of like the entrance of Wartwood and like it's like darkness with like the fireflies and then you see like Sasha in the
Yes.
distance. It's like
With the hood on, yeah.
and like it's Sasha like just it's Sasha, but it's just that I don't know that shift was so interesting to me.
Yeah, because Sasha's like a different beast. You know what I mean? Like when that's what I love about the girls so much when they show up. It is a big fucking deal when Sasha and Marcy show up. It's not like some casual character that just comes in. Like no. When Sasha shows up, like shit's gonna happen. When Marcy shows up, shit's gonna go down. You know what I mean? It's always a big shift in the tone and vibe of the show. That's always something I liked. They're they're not just characters. They are like Sasha and Marcy aren't just like characters that appear. They come in and almost take over the show. So like and like well, I can go on the bigger thing about this at Marcy in season 2, but like yeah, with Sasha here, like she completely changes the vibe of like everything. You know what I mean? Like everything feels a bit more tense. There's a sense of like something ain't right with this girl. There's some like she's planning something, but you don't know what exactly. Like during reunion, so it's I don't know. I always liked that the friendship was like always like the biggest stakes in the show to me. Like it was always like the highest tier of like oh shit, you know what I mean? Like of conflict. Nothing was ever above the friendship, if that makes sense. In terms of stakes, I mean, in terms of like the conflict and bigger parts of the show. So
Yeah, and then like it's like you have that like sense of dread at least when like Sasha first appears. And then like even though like the reunion is like kind of like at the end of the year, like their little like reunion is kind of like very happy, but then Sasha just is just like, oh, like I brought some friends, and then you just see like Grime, and like he
you're
eats
like,
the
oh shit.
yeah, like he eats the firefly that's like in front of him, and like all the eyes of the toads like glow up behind him, and like even when you get into reunion, you don't even start from that point. It immediately starts with the flashback, I believe.
Flashback. Yep. Immediately from the flashback. Cause then at that point we're getting a lot more like of what is Anne's relationship with Sasha. And what's great about it with like wait, should I go there? Like to the reunion flashback or
Yeah,
like
sure thing.
okay, so like what I always liked about the girls, and it's something I'm gonna expand upon a bit once we get to the season like 2 retrospectives, is like the girls are like intertwined, right? If their motivations are always baked upon each other and the kind of the toxic, codependent nature of the friendship, right? Anne as a person was always a pushover because to a certain degree, Anne didn't have to create a backbone for herself because Sasha was her backbone, right? Sasha always protected Anne against bullies and people who were like mean to her. That she never really had to build her own sense of confidence or own sense of worth in order to defend herself and to stop people from treating her that way or to invest in herself, right? So like, and that's not saying like Sasha is like the the problem of Anne, like of all her issues. Like, no. Like Anne is still responsible for her problematic mindset as a person. But like here, like Sasha gives like once we know Sasha, we're given so much more context of what makes Anne tick. Like like throughout season one, like we're like, oh, that's why Anne thought like that. Or like in Best Friends, or some of her attitudes, even like subtly throughout the season too, of like pushing Spring and Polly into doing stuff they don't actually want to do, or like her own selfish attitude sometimes of a friendship itself, and her own toxic viewpoint of herself because you have this person, Sasha, who thinks of Anne as smaller and weaker than her, and someone who always needs protection and can sometimes ignore her word a lot. So like it's interesting how much information you're given in such a little time, but like how influential Sasha is to the person Anne is before Amphibia, and like you're given this information so quickly. It's just there's a lot going on there, and like it makes Anne and Sasha's relationship always feel like kind of the more complicated out of the two, I would say. Like Marcy and Anne have their own beef too, and I'll gush on that when we get to 2B because I got a whole take on that. But like it's there's a lot of gravity to this, like to the flashback, because like if you were given this like before the series started, like we got everything about the girls in like one episode before they got to Amphibia, the show would feel a bit weaker. You'd have a better idea of like where things are going, but like the show is always willing to like recontextualize the entire season without giving you the entire information of Anne's character or like Anne's motivations. But like now when you have it and you rewatch, now you have this flashback and you rewatch season one, or you rewatch season one, you're like, oh, that's why Anne was doing A, B, C, or D. So a lot packed into like one scene. It's great. Guys.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Impact. Like,
Oh, okay.
sorry, like I
I know
was
something
muted,
happened. Let my mic turn on.
but like,
Oh, okay.
but like, yeah, their dynamic, like Anne and Sasha, that flashback scene. Um, I think it kind of like paints Sasha in a more like antagonistic view.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely
But
does.
then when you cut back to like the present day, you kind of don't know when that's gonna like when that's gonna happen, because it doesn't really like the way Sasha treats Anne in flashback doesn't really happen for a while in reunion. Like, because you get the end of discussion stuff, and then like you kind of go through like Anne and Sasha like catching up, going to Toad Tower, and then it's only kind of when Sasha brings up the rebellion stuff. Like even when Sasha brings up the rebellion stuff, you kind of know like okay, like she's just kind of like following orders or carrying something out just to get home
But
or whatever. And then when she brings up like Hop Hop, that's kind of like that's when you know how their dynamic is gonna like break down the moment she like pulls up Hop Hop's thing, because like now it's like
yeah.
that's Anne's like personal stake in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and like she planned it out too. Like keep this in mind. This isn't just Grimes' plan. This is Sasha's plan to kill Grimes. I mean, not kill Grimes. Kill Hop Hop. Like it's it's interesting because like I don't know because if it was like just Grimes' plan and Sasha was like, oh, we just gotta go along with it. No. Like this is Sasha's the one who was scheming to kill Hot Pop and just get home. So it's I think that adds a lot more to it just in general if it was just Grimes' plans.
Yeah, and oh man, I really wish we got to see those other towns in Frog Valley, like I think it
Yeah.
was like Lily Paddington, Swamp Shiro.
Uh,
Like I'm just remembering these off the top of my head because I always wanted to like see more of Frog Valley outside of Wartwood.
yeah, didn't Matt say like I'm pretty sure Matt said somewhere we were gonna explore those and we never
No, no,
did.
no. Like, okay, I think I misinterpreted because I asked like he actually answered my AMA question, and the way Matt said it like was like, "Oh, I would love to explore those like other towns." So it's like, "Oh, I first interpreted it as like, "Oh, we're going to see it." But then like if you like read it, it's kind of like Matt saying, "Oh, I would have
That would
loved
be
to."
cool.
Yeah, it's like past tense, like it's done. Like,
Oh. It's interesting though, because like when he was answering that AMA, like it's this is a bit of a tangent, but like some things that he did say, like, oh, stay tuned, like not most of the things I don't think did, but like I'm pretty sure there was a question about Sasha being bi,
yeah.
and Matt was like, stay tuned, and it's like, oh, and then it shows up in the finale, so like they were still like working on season 3 at the time, so like
I think that was
I mean
just
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't course correct entirely, but like
yeah, I think that
I
was
don't know,
just
it just
something
gives
Matt was cooking up with like that was something that was in Matt's head at the time. Like, because I think he did mention that he always knew how, like, where he wanted the girls to end up. Like, he always knew, like, what their, like, future selves would be like. Like, it was always, like, the plan to have Anne become, like, a herpetologist. So, like, I guess, like, Sasha's thing was kind of like something Matt always kind of. Isn't Sasha's, like, voice actor Anaconda bi? Hello? Hello? Test.
fun. This is a free opportunity here. This is exploiting the show. Hey, so I don't know. It is interesting because maybe like when we get comics in the future, like
Yeah, Impact.
maybe we
Impact.
could
I kind of
expand
got
on
cut
those
off.
towns and see where those are at, and has some misfit adventures over there we never saw. Boom, easy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like the shorts they uploaded to their YouTube channel. So yeah, see
Yeah.
it.
Wait, Impact. I kind of cut. I think I got cut off for a second. You're talking about like
I
comics and
forgot what
stuff.
I was gonna make a point about Sasha there. Like it is interesting that when we get to the point of like Anne recognizes Sasha's plan, she immediately is like, oh hell no, we gotta get the fuck out of here, which makes sense obviously, right? But like I like that Anne tries to be a bit like sneaky with it, with like tricking the guards into thinking it's her, which is always like the funniest joke to me. I don't know what it is, but like Brenda Song doing like an anaconda expression was like impression was like
It wasn't that
I don't know.
bad.
I always love that joke. Like so like I don't know because Anne immediately is like in like protect the town mode. Like we got to get out of here like real quick. She's trying to play into that role now.
Like, oh, can you hear
But
me
like
now?
not in a way where she immediately tells Sasha to like fuck off. She's trying to do it in a way that doesn't like yeah, but with she's in the room with like with Sasha. It's not like she can like just sword fight her, Like it's
Yeah.
better to like try to get them out of there before shit hits the fan. So,
Yeah, plus
which I
I
mean, like
definitely.
Nick, you go.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, like I feel like yeah, she's definitely still afraid of Sasha in a way. I feel like yeah, she definitely just wasn't ready for like a direct confrontation until like until she was actually forced to. But I think at that moment she was just I think she was willing to see the error in Sasha's ways and just look for a better solution. But yeah, at that point, she
Yeah.
just wasn't actually ready to stand up to her.
Yeah, like Anne is kind of going 50-50 with it, which is something like to travel back to season 3 here. It is something that like I always liked about, because obviously Anne's foil, right? But like it's always an interesting thing where love Anne's relationship with Sasha and Marcy, right? Like, so with Andreas, he's always like, Andreas will sometimes confront the core with like an opinion. He'll be like, hey, like maybe we shouldn't possess a 13-year-old kid, Maybe that's not a cool idea. And the core is like, shut the fuck up. And Andreas is like, okay. So like Andreas is always going halfway with like, even with like when he has to say, be like, hey, let's not kill a 13-year-old. He has to like find some roundabout way to be like, well, we could like trick them, I guess. That could work too. Like Andreas is always playing in the middle. He never fully commits to standing up to the core. He's always like half-assing it and then being like, well, I'm not responsible. Like I had no choice. Like I must do what I must. And it's like, it's interesting that Andreas is like that 1,000-year version of Anne that never stood up to that toxic influence and mindset that it's let that mindset, not mindset, let that person control his life for years and years and years and in ways he doesn't even know it. Like how Anne doesn't have the ability to recognize the toxicity of her relationship with Sasha and Marcy, that like she sort of lets that system and mindset affect her in ways she doesn't even recognize. And I don't know, I always found that foil interesting, that Andreas, again, that foil to Anne, but also like he never stood up to the core, so he's always half-assing his confrontation with it. So I always found that neat, like parallel there. That was always fun. Like once we got to Olivia and Yunnan, and pretty much everything clicked with me with like Andreas's character. So then Cora King adds to it. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and then we get into like the standing up to you line or the and how that kind of like is like word for word like
The same.
yeah, the same between Anne and
Yeah.
Andrews. And that's like it's like just when you think the show was like done kind of like playing up the similarities between Anne and Andrews, they go ahead and do that.
Yeah, they throw it right in your face. They throw it right in your face with it. Because like with like Sasha's connection with the core and like Marcy's reflection of the core, like it's not as obvious. You know what I mean? Like with the core, like I mean, there is one line with Darcy where she's like, as a fellow control freak, you'll probably appreciate this. Like that's obviously they're supposed to parallel each other. And with Marcy and the core, it's kind of a fun thing because they foil each other in the sense of like how Marcy used the box to escape. Oh man, I'm gonna save that for season 3. Hold on. I'll
Oh,
save those foils
yeah.
for later.
Oh,
Yeah,
but I think
that's a whole thing.
just to go a bit back to the like even before the duel between Anne and Sasha, where like they're at the top of like Toad Tower and like I think Nick had this really good like I remember he said something about how like Grime kind of said like when they're about to grab Hop Hop and then Grime talks about how like their way of life is at stake. and how just like Anne's time with the planners kind of like endangers the status quo of Amphibia. And then we also saw with all like the Hop Hop Rebellion stuff, like it's just like that's just them being together kind of like threatens everything. Well, not threatens,
Yeah,
yeah, like the status quo in general. Like, and even like before the fight, like I'm trying to remember, like yeah, I forgot my point, but
I was gonna. There's gonna be time I was gonna mention like with the status quo part where like that's what I love that line so much because like I think like the foil with Sasha's like relationship with the Toads was like, oh, it's just power, and like yeah, like that's true. But what made Sasha a toxic person ultimately in the core of the toxicity of the friendship was because the main problem of the friendship with Sasha, Anne, and Marcy, and really where their motivations come from in the narrative is like the codependent nature of the friendship, right? Because they always relied on each other to cover each other's weaknesses, right? They inadvertently always depend on one another to help each other out, right? And what made Sasha like turn into this toxic person is that she was the keeper of the status quo. She used power and manipulation to maintain the status quo of the friendship, where she is in charge. She tells them what to do, and she will always save Anne and Marcy, right? Like, because Sasha's fundamental problem isn't just about power, it's about someone who is stuck in the past. She is stuck in how the friendship used to be, how it used to, yeah, she's stuck to how Anne and Marcy used to be, and she uses power and manipulation to maintain the status quo. That's what keeps her as like the active toxic presence in the story. So it's always interesting that the Toads reflect that part of Sasha too, both in the power of bringing down others and keeping them in line, but also being the keeper of the status quo and making sure that things don't change, don't evolve, and don't grow. And that's what makes Sasha such like a threatening force in the narrative to Anne's story because like she's trying to stop Anne from growing. She's trying to make her growth seem not smaller, but like stop her from getting out of line. It's an interesting foil Sasha has with the Toads, and again, this will be a fun foil with the core, right? The core is ultimately the keeper of the status quo. It's someone who it's this being that ultimately tries to maintain this toxic ideology that like the stones were their god-given right to conquer no matter what. Even if Leaf says, hey, we're all gonna die, Cora's like, don't care, I don't care. Anyways, let's keep conquering. It will keep going. Even when it loses the box, it's like, ah, fuck it, we'll just wait for it to come. Like, it's the ultimate keeper of the status quo. So like I don't know, I always found that interesting that Sasha's fundamental problem is really about more of a character being stuck in the past. And her problematic nature kind of stems all from that ideology and her reflections of the Toads and the core. So I always found that line really great. But like pretty much the entire narrative, really. And like how it's an antithesis to the entire themes of the show. So yeah.
yeah, and like Sasha gets like is kind of close to like discouraging Anne for standing up for herself, and then like Sprig kind of steps in. He's kind of like the complete opposite of all of that,
Yeah.
and like he kind of like Matt said, like he's like the rudder. He's Anne's rudder, and kind of like steers her back at the like in the last moment. Because like just the thing of like you see Anne grow throughout this entire season, and then it's just that she kind of fails a little bit here. But then like you have
Yeah.
and then you kind of have Sprig like there to like just pick her like back up like immediately.
Yeah, because like Sprig has realized like who Anne really is. Sasha is stuck on her like Anne is what's the word? Sprig understands who Anne is in the present, here and now, who she's grown to be, who she's developed to be, and realize this true version of herself. And Anne's had that ability thanks to the planters and thanks to recognizing, oh shit, like my life has value and I'm in a relationship and with people that really care and love me. And here, like she's with and with Sasha, the problem is that like and let me rephrase that. I'm going over the place. Because Sprig recognizes all of Anne's growth and development as a character, right? And Sasha, her fundamental problem is that she is stuck in how Anne used to be, right? With the line of like, what's gotten into you, Anne? You would never like this back home, right? So when Sprig is like going against what's the word? Like Sprig is like this such a problematic nature for Sasha. Because not only is Sprig calling out Sasha for her bullshit, but he's also like this disruptor of that status quo and of this past version of Anne. That now, if she lacks power and control, like, well, who is she now in the friendship if she doesn't have that that status, you know? So I love that Sprig is like that, like this huge threat to Sasha, even though he's just like a tiny little frog who shot like mud at her. He's not threatening, but like he also really is at the same time. Because Sprig is that light that gives Anne the ability to trust and believe in herself. And for Sasha, that's a bad thing. If Anne doesn't need to rely on Sasha to like develop to have a backbone to defend herself, then like why is Sasha even here? Why is she even a part of the friendship, right? So like Sprig is like this threat that needs to be terminated like immediately, and Anne goes like, "Nah, hell no, that's not gonna happen," and the whole fight occurs. I don't know. I always found that interesting.
Tommy there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. So I was muted again. Like, I'm
Uh,
trying to think because I know we've kind of covered the fight between Anne and Sasha so much. Like,
yeah.
I'm trying to think what new ground there is to cover. Like, because like going a little bit into like fandom stuff. Like, Reunion was like True Colors for the show before True Colors aired. Like, and like it's kind of like Impact. You weren't here, but like you weren't in the fandom at the time. But like Reunion was kind of like the peak of Amphibia. But then once True Colors came out, it kind of like Reunion kind of faded into like the background. Like I like you know that meme where Andy's like, "I don't want to play with you anymore." I feel like that's like Reunion for the Amphibia fandom, which like it's still
Which is
great.
weird because like
Yeah, go
that's
ahead.
that's that's interesting because like I don't feel like True Colors ever had that happen with the hardest thing
No.
like that. I feel like True Colors still holds that bar of being the best finale, which you know we'll talk about it when we get there. But like it's I don't know. That's so interesting to me because I guess I wonder why that happened. Because I think the hardest thing there's a debate on whether or not which one is better. I guess between True Colors and that episode. And like with the hardest thing, I also mean like beginning of the end, all in, and the hardest thing. They're a combo. So like it's I don't know. It's interesting to think about that reunion. I still feel like reunion is still like a like it's an amphibious season finale. Like you know, like they are always going to be big deals. But like in comparison to the others, it's interesting to hear that like reunion was sort of gotten in the shadow a little bit in terms of like in right next to True Colors. So no, it's interesting that True Colors still kind of stands top as king. Like not that far away from the hardest thing in Reunion, to be honest. Like I wouldn't consider True Colors to be like I would consider it to be a better episode than Reunion, but I wouldn't consider it to be like so above Reunion, like that, like it makes that episode seem smaller from my personal perspective. Like, no. Like Reunion had this place of being like a small scale conflict that is like really this big rupturing event for Anne's arc and Sasha's arc in this story. That like there might be some elements where I would say Reunion does some better stuff than True Colors, but we'll like in terms of like I feel like its impact on like the characters specifically afterward. So yeah.
Like when Reunion came out, it was kind of like I was like I still really enjoyed watching Amphibia, but I think after Reunion, like after like 10 minutes, I was like, okay, I think this is my favorite Disney show. Like I'm trying like I'm trying not to dig on Gravity Falls too much, but like after Reunion aired, I was like, oh, like I thought about the episode for like a couple of minutes or like a couple of hours. I was like, okay, I think this has surpassed Gravity Falls for me. I think that's my spicy take.
Wow.
Like,
That's no, that's a fair take to be honest. Like I feel like
but with just season one,
huh,
but just season one, I was thinking like this is better than like this is like my
for
favorite
both
show.
seasons of Gravity Falls.
Yeah.
Huh. Huh. Okay.
Like,
That's a bit spicier. I thought we meant like the first season of both shows. Oh
but no,
damn,
because
the
I
whole
just
thing.
yeah, just because like that because reunion like Matt said like the canon build up stuff like that I got kind of like swept up in all of it like reunion was like that's why I'm so surprised like reunion kind of like lost I don't want to say lost anything but kind of like was talked about less. It's just that reunion is like a really strong like finale like
Yeah.
because like you just watch it and like everything kind of like wraps up so nicely like at this point I think Matt mentioned that if they didn't get renewed, like this is how kind of like the show would. I think this is how he pitched when he pitched the show Amphibia. He had like season one kind of like mapped out start to finish, and that was like pitched to Disney.
Huh.
And like
That'd be kind of crazy.
and
And the show would from there.
yeah, and like season one like reunion makes season one like there is continuity in season one like but reunion just kind of like ties it all together like perfectly like the power of a good ending. Like it just like we'll see later on the show how like Amphibia kind of just like sneaks up on us with like this ending that just like kind of like pulls everything together like so like perfectly in my opinion. Like and just that ending alone kind of like elevates the rest of the season for me. Like I don't like I don't know how to like I don't know how to describe it. Like Amphibia, I enjoyed the show. Then Anne vs. the Wild was kind of like me thinking, okay, there's like more going on to this than meets the eye. And then like Reunion kind of just like cemented like
Everything together.
yeah, like just like okay, this is like my favorite show ever. Like I am like here till the end for this. Like
Okay. Because for me with Reunion, it was like, oh man, like I feel like I've rewatched Reunion a couple of times. Sometimes my first watch is like a blur with this one specifically. Like I think Reunion was definitely the point where I was like, because I was enjoying season one, I was having a good time, and I think Reunion was kind of like the oh, shit, okay, like Amphibia is not fucking around,
yeah,
like going, especially in coming to the next season. I'm really excited, and I think one thing Reunion has over the other finales is that like I feel like Reunion feels like it has a more natural way of bringing everything together. I think True Colors does a good job, and I think like everything in the throne room is insane, right? Like that is like the craziest part of the episode. But like I feel like Reunion has like a better pace than True Colors. Like I feel like I like Reunion because it's kind of a smaller scale conflict and narrative, but like it's not treated that way. It's not treated like, oh, this is like a whatever. This is season one, like whatever. This is like a roadblock till we get to season 2 or 3. No, 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 no. This is like treated as like a big deal culmination of everything we've had in the season, and like again, huge ripple effect for Anne and Sasha's entire arcs as characters, right? Just from this one episode alone, and I feel like what's the word Reunion doesn't have to pull stuff, like doesn't have to like have like epic like Super Saiyan powers or like anime fights to be like crazy. It's very grounded as a finale. And I think that really helps the vibe of season one. And season one isn't like, again, doesn't have Super Saiyans, doesn't have giant mech robots, doesn't have like lightsabers. You know, that's not its thing. It's more about being this grounded, like rough and tumble frog world, right? Like that's and Reunion kind of keeps that feel of it of making sure everything is grounded in Reunion. And I think that kind of gives it a very different vibe to the other finales, where like it never feels like it's going crazy in one direction. And I think with like True Colors, it worked because like we set up these plot points of like the Super Saiyan powers and the stakes getting higher and the conflict getting bigger. You know what I mean? But I feel like Reunion has the strongest beginning, middle, and end from TC, and like the hardest thing is like kind of a hard thing to compare because it's like 3 episodes. But like I don't know, I always liked that not the hardest thing. Reunion was always it felt grounded and never felt like the tone was drastically changing from the other episodes. It felt like we were still in the same place, and it didn't have to pull anything out, if that makes sense. So out of the ether. There we go.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I do think grounded is like a good way to describe like Reunion. Yeah, I think it just Reunion kind of like it's like it kind of like points out to people that like season one had like a direct like in season one. I think Reunion showed that Amphibia knew what it was doing in season one. Like
Yeah.
it gave that kind of like it was kind of like showing people like okay, like everything we did in season one, yeah, like sometimes we kind of like took it easy, but like there's a point to all of this. Like everything you watched throughout like season one, like there was a point to all of it, and like it's the like and it's pointing to this Reunion. And then at the same time, it kind of like it does tease that there's stuff like beyond the valley, and there's like stuff going on in the greater like world beyond the world of Wartwood. But it still kind of focuses on Wartwood. It doesn't really like how do I describe it? Like
It doesn't go beyond Wartwood. It's specifically on like this is a Wartwood conflict. Well, it's a Valley conflict, but Wartwood is the most important because Hop Hop is, the one who's in danger here. It's the one that's like it doesn't go beyond the Valley. It's not like this is like Newtopia shows up and then like now it's a Newtopia Toad Frog conflict or like I don't know, like the core shows up. No, no, no.
well like
No, it's just like it's a grounded conflict.
I guess I'm trying to say like it's like even though the conflict is focused within Warwood, the show still reminds you that like what the characters are doing here is like making a is having an impact on the world outside of Warwood. It's like all these like small actions that the characters were doing season 1 are like it's like it's making a difference, not making a difference, but like it's like changing the status quo beyond Wartwood,
Yeah.
like like a domino effect. And part of it was like Hop Pop's like mayor plot, like kind of made like a big deal. Like when Sasha brings up like, oh, like the other frog valleys, like the other frog towns are like starting to revolt because of this guy. Like it's just it's like the scope, like oh man, like I just wish I had a better way to describe this. It's like the show is like focused on Wartwood, but like it's like the outside world is noticing what's going on and is kind of like starting to converge onto the characters. And like
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then like very briefly it's like the end of reunion is like our main characters kind of like pushing that away, pushing those outside forces like away, but they're still addressing that like okay, but now we got to like go out there. We got to go to them now. Like we can't, it's like there's no going back now. Like
Which is interesting because like I do feel like in a way like what's the word? Like I do feel like season 2 sort of like okay, well that's not true because Newtopia like confronts Grime and Sasha. I was gonna say it doesn't fully commit to that with Anne and the Planters. Like Hop Hop being like a revolutionary doesn't really come back too much. Like after this season, even though it plays such a big part in this finale. But like with Sasha and Grime, it's like absolutely like Utopia is like, ayo, like what are y'all doing? Like, why did the tower explode? Like, you're under arrest or whatever. You know, they're they're more like what's the word? Like, I feel like Anne and the Planters are like not exactly the biggest focus as of now. As of now, because like in terms of like the destruction of Toad Tower is more like Sasha and Grimes' problem. But even then, season 2 is still like having this vibe, but just in a different way. Like with like how the Toad Towers are noticing Anne and Marcy are with Andreas and like they're traveling around and Sasha's like, oh my god, Anne and Marcy are like hanging out without me. Ah, and, you know, that whole thing. Where like we know information is going around and Yunnan knows about the Toad Towers coming together. There's news going on. But like Anne and the Planters specifically, like it's it's more what's the word? Like I feel like Anne and the Planters have like a ripple effect on the entire world, but the world isn't focusing specifically on them until until we get to season 3. I think that's when like Andrews is like, oh shit, like Anne is like actually important. He is a big deal. Okay, she's got Super Saiyan powers. That Planter family is like a little fucked up. We got to take them out. So like, like it's the one point I would argue where Anne is like the top dog in the narrative, and I think you could have easily made that a thing in season 2 as well. With Andreas, if Andreas gave more of a crap about Amphibia, like because he's just gonna destroy it anyway. So he's like, I don't care. Like, Rebellion don't care, doesn't matter. So, but like once Anne is like against his plans, he's like, oh, hold up, wait a minute, we got to take her out. So like, I don't know. I would say like I don't know where I'm going with this. I would say like like Anne and the Planters, I feel like weirdly enough become the top dogs, not in season 2 after this conflict, but after season 3 when like Anne's just like, oh hell no, like we gotta take them out. So that's it.
yeah, okay. I think we can probably wrap up for tonight. Like I guess starting with Nick, any final thoughts on the second half of season 1?
I take back nothing I said. No, I'm just joking. I was joking. I honestly, I don't think I have anything new besides what everybody said here. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still like a worthwhile second half of the season. And I think reviewing it like this definitely helped like settled some opinions I had and just gave me like a bigger sense of clarity with the series. And honestly, it's why I always look forward to these talks. 'Cause I always just see the show in a new light after we're just done talking about it. So, um, 1B, yeah, I mean, it's good. Honestly, it's good. I don't have anything else besides that.
All right, thank you, Nick. Impact, any final thoughts on 1B?
So I really enjoyed 1B. I think like this part of the show has a lot of really fun character work for Anne that's like gonna be a lot more interesting once we get to the next seasons of like Anne gaining more agency over her life and like taking more active roles of trying to get back to Earth, right? And like that's gonna be a big thing when we get to season 2 and how the character like changes a bit with Marcy. And like also Anne learning these really important life lessons are going to affect again her growth throughout the rest of the series while in combat camp. There's a lot of great stuff going with her character, and her relationship with Sasha is great, and how well her character is done of Sasha's character, which is a bit more antagonistic as of now, like is gives us so much detail into what makes Anne tick and what makes her the person she was before, that like I really appreciate this season a lot more from like an Anne character point of view, and just in general, this retrospective has given me a lot more like clarity on like Anne's arc and some of the fun nuances of her character that I even sometimes wish fandom would go on a little more at points, but like more Anne for me, I guess. So yeah, I think her character is great. I think there's some messy episodes at the start. Ultimately, I think it nails it near the end. And yeah, 1B is great. I really like this part of the season. I think it's retrospective. It's giving me more of a, like thought on season 1 more. So especially rewatching it again. So yeah, it's great.
All right, thank you, Impact. And yeah, my thoughts on 1B overall were like very solid, like higher highs and lower lows. Like I do think like I approach it. I feel like for 1A, I felt a lot more like my thoughts on it felt like maybe more like energetic and wild. But maybe that's because since we kind of talked about like season one on that recording a bit more, for 1B, I'm kind of like more, I don't want to say nuanced, maybe more like analytical. Maybe like it's like maybe I'm going into 1B with more like clarity. Like I don't know, but I do think overall like what 1B is still like has like the segments that are really good are like fantastic. I think it just doesn't get me like riled up as much as like 1A. But I do think it's like a really good season, like a really good second half. But I think with that we can probably wrap up for tonight. And like thank you guys so much for coming on. And next time we'll be going to our season 2A coverage, and
Let's go.
that'll be fun. But say goodbye, everyone.
Peace, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.